Welcome to the Decode Podcast with Elias Malfovan, Daniel Stanfill, and Sean Kincaid.
Welcome to another episode of the Decode Podcast, and we're joined by Mr. Sean Patterson. This was an interesting one here because when we booked Sean, he had one job, and here we are recording tonight, and he has another one.
Wow.
So, Sean, thanks for being with us. Just a little bit about Sean. He's another California guy like myself up in Irvine, not too far from me. He has a master's in nuclear science and engineering from MIT. Ever heard of it? He's formerly with TTM, former Amazon, and former Summit. And his newest venture is he is the founder of CrossGen AI. So welcome on, Sean. Thanks. For joining us tonight. It's nice to have a Sean on the show that has, some significant experience in our space. It's a rare treat. So thanks for being with us.
It's my longtime listener, first time caller. At least he spells his name correctly.
They got that right. We should probably start with what is AI, right? Nobody in our industry is even talking about it. Like at Apex, hardly anyone even mentioned it, right? How are you using AI?
Okay, I think AI, even when I use it today, it's getting overblown because it's usually like shortcutting to summarizing a bunch of things all in one, right? But I am using it personally, right? I've been using it for about 2.5 years as it relates to, people think of like ChatGPT. So let's put it in that context, right? So I started using it about 2.5 years ago and started to have some pretty good experiences back then where enough work kind of kept me interested, but it wasn't ready for, I'll say, prime time. About just over a year ago, I think when people would know it as kind of 3.5 came out for ChatGPT. Sure. If you don't know what that is, you can look it up. But once that came out, I did this my son does swimming, and the state always puts out like the meets on the website, and it's an old HTML website, with an HTML table and all this. And I used to have to like copy it over, put it in my schedule, invite my wife to it, so only one of us has to do it and all this stuff. And back with 3.5, at that time I was like, let's try AI on this. And so I screenshotted it on my phone, uploaded that image, and I said, create an ICS file, right? So that's the calendar files and for all these meets. And it worked. And it created the file, and then I got it. And so my first real use case of how do I automate and really save myself time, because like this exercise would have taken like 40 minutes of just no value add, right? And so the ICS file comes out, great, and opens up, and I'm like, no, I really, you can't add invites to the ICS file. So now I got to double click on all these things, add my wife to it, stuff like that. And so started to think differently about what problem you're trying to present to AI. And so I said, you know what, give me a Outlook macro file instead that creates all the events, because macros can now send emails on your behalf. And then I got a little aggressive in that same thing, and I said, and also add another time blocker before that of the average drive time to that school from my place of work to reserve the time based on the average, blah, blah, blah. And sure enough, I copy it. It even tells you at the end, hey, whatever, I think it's like Shift 11 or something to open up macros. Pasted it, play, boom, boom, boom. Just emails just flying out. Worked first time. And I think it's great when you get a first experience on a real use case that it works the first time. I don't think that's always the case. And obviously I pivoted from ICS to all that. And if you ask me today how you would do it, you actually present more of the problem. I want to get this information into the system instead of a solutioning for it, which is, something you need to learn over time, talk about problems versus solutions. And so that's where I got kind of hooked. I was like, all right, there's something here now. Because now I'm like in business mode, right? Because it saved me like legit 40 minutes, and that whole iteration was like 10 minutes or something. And now if I had to do it today, it'd take me 10 seconds, right? And so I got the bug, I'll say the AI bug, and here we are today. So I would say from a business perspective, in September-ish timeframe of last year, when maybe the 4.0 kind of stuff you start coming out. I was like, no, the trajectory of this is right. And it's good enough now where in an 80-20 world, like of decisions where you're not trying to say, hey, I take my job. I don't think it's there. I'm not sure where it goes there, but it's partnering with it in a meaningful way to save yourself time. And now I use it freaking less than 10 minutes a day, every 10 minutes a day, practically, or more.
Yeah, it probably came out about the same time as when Kincaid's post really started exploding, right?
Yeah, so I mean, that's kind of like my little AI journey. And then I started getting into all the other ones, and but from a business perspective, you know, I was the chief operations officer at Summit, and I could see like there's no like it's not curving off here, like it's headed up there. This is going to be a real tool for people that provides real value. And it, you know, look, it doesn't solve world hunger, but it does really provide value if you use the tool correctly. And I think that's where my focus went to. How do I teach people within the company how to use these tools as opposed to the Google? Everybody kind of asks a Google question. If you ask a Google question, you get a Google answer, right? And so I don't say like the words garbage in, garbage out, but I've got to this place where it's simple in, simple out. And so it's all about this concept called context, and you can look up all that stuff if you're not drinking the AI juice yet. But I found that just a lot of people didn't understand those things. And I also looked around and saw in the business world, so many people just this is a new tool. It's the new calculator, if you will, right? And everybody needs to learn it. Everyone in the company needs to learn it, right? And so it's a top-down thing as well as a bottom-up and all around. And I see too many companies that are like, they hear the AI buzzword and they think, okay, how do I get this in my product and sell it? It's not, you're skipping way to the end state, and you're making a crappy product as a result of it because you don't understand even what you're putting in there. And you're missing the entire...
Go on my marketing pamphlet now.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, you know, I will reserve company names, but I was sitting in, you know, some vendors, and you know, it's now in the sales pitch, right? And they're like, "Oh, AI," and I just pulled the thread just a smidgen with these guys, right? You know, what's AI? And it turns out like the words they're using, it's not actually AI. What a lot of companies are doing, though, they are trying to market it that way. And so I just realized the lack of understanding around me, and truly. And the reason I'm on my own now is that this is just like the wave of AIs, I think, right here, right now, and I didn't want to miss it because everybody's on a level playing field right now from a business perspective. Nobody went to school for any of this stuff. You went to like machine learning piece, that's all that kind of scientific stuff, but the application of AI, nobody went to school for it, and we are all globally in the same boat. And your choice is either to say, yeah, I agree that this is what the future is, and choose to adopt it now. And I encourage people to do that because I think it's like 85% there. And that 85% provides so much value to it. You just can't turn it on full key and expect that it doesn't, you know, screw up. Of course, humans screw up as well, to be fair. But it's not at that point. But it is at a point where it should be a partner with you. You know, you should be hiring your own, we'll call it executive assistant. Everybody in the world, doesn't matter what job you do, whether it's a home or business, it is truly there. And so, you know, so my long-winded answer is what the AI thing is, but I've decided enough to go off my own. Yeah.
If I can jump in real quick, I like that example you gave to start, because I feel like that's a very practical and personal example of how you found ways to use AI in your personal life.
Mm-hmm.
And we've already kind of discussed a little bit of the hype and buzz around the term, and you know, maybe some lack of understanding of what it really is. So for those listening or watching that don't have that level of depth and are wondering like, okay, what does this mean for my business? Like, what are some meaningful areas that AI can be implemented, like realistic expectations that would result from those?
Yeah. So if you have to think about this in, I call it 3 pillars. One is AI for everyone, and that's loosely ChatGPT, the kind of buzzword that's out there. So that's just using these chat interfaces that are available, whether it's ChatGPT or Claude or Grok, or that doesn't matter right now. If you're not using any of those, you should pick one and start to use it. So that's use case number one. Use case number two is where everybody's trying to skip to at a minimum, which is AI workflows and automation. Now, to be fair, automation and all that stuff, it has existed for some amount of time with programs like Zapier and Make.com and all these other things. But everybody's trying to either skip there, because in that place, you can automate business workflows for sure. But you don't know what you're automating yet if you just skip there. And then the third part is sort of proprietary things like, Sean and I are talking about, like coding systems and things like that. You can do those things where it's proprietary business, and now you have competitive advantages as a result of that. That is more technical. Believe it or not, most people can actually get there over time, but that today you would bring somebody in or have somebody on your team do it. So let's just kind of talk about this pillar one, pillar two, sort of ChatGPT and then automated ChatGPT. The first use cases that I think most people can do from a business perspective is to just take an email, copy, paste it into ChatGPT, as long as your security requirements allow for it, right? So for those that do ITAR, don't be putting ITAR information into an open system.
Into DeepSeek.
Exactly, any of that. And just use it as a grammar checker at first, right? And there, again, there's things out there like Grammarly, things like that. That's fine, but you'll see that it will clean it up. But then you can also say, hey, I want to communicate this. My customer's really pissed at me, and this is the email I developed. Here's what my customer persona is, and it will give you a better version of what you typed up. Don't go to this whole thing of like, respond to my emails. Like if you're not trying and understanding stuff yet, you are not ready to like cut yourself out, and I'll say get lazy in some ways and just try to say, answer my emails. Like, will it do that? Yeah, you won't like the results. You need to learn what the correct question is or the correct problem statement is. And the only way to do that is in this pillar one stuff. And that's using this ChatGPT every single day. In fact, from a business perspective, I think the emails is the first use case, but people definitely get into spreadsheets, right? So we'll do spreadsheet analysis. Another first use case I worked on with some people at work was that we're trying to match up like process flows to some other financial metric thing. And it was two different files with like crazy lookup tables. The cells themselves were like the number one and then like equals and then in parenthesis. And I'm talking about text, not the actual, Excel code. Like somebody typed it in there that way is just stupid. And that would have been a nightmare of trying to figure out how to get Excel to do it. And you put both files in there and it does the equation for you. And that saved, one of those things that saved probably 2 hours, because I don't think, that person knew how to do it, and saved them, we helped save a lot of time, and I just challenged them on it. So I think those are like simple use cases in business where people can start to get a feel for what it is. But it goes beyond that, where those are like, you're asking it to help you to do things that you would have kind of looked up online before, right? And unlike Google, with Google, you generally have to ask a question in the way that somebody else in past history has asked and answered. So you have very specific kind of search results as a result of that. AI allows you to ask the question in the way that you know how to ask it, and it amalgamates the entire internet effectively and human knowledge into answering your question the way you asked it.
Sean, do you know about that word, amalgamate, in our podcast?
Well, he just used it. Yeah,
I know, but do you know like the adults? Because he actually listens to our podcast. It's not like just
I don't.
But that's a point of contention. We'll word it with me and Elias, because I've never heard that word before.
Aggregate. Amass. I'm not not English major, right? I'm an engineer at heart. So, and now I misspell even worse now that I use AI to kind of correct things.
It's so bad.
But I think those are kind of good use cases for business people to start out. But the real value is when you're actually using it as a thought partner, particularly at a senior leadership level for strategy, things like that. Because what winds up happening, I kind of go back to this whole problem statement. If you think about, and people can have these experiences pretty fast if you're asking the right question / stating the right problem. When you ask it to do my example of my son swimming, I told it, I want you to do this. And it's a good soldier. It will do and help you along that pathway you guided it. But if you think about it in a business strategy point of view, you're saying, hey, help me do X, Y, and Z on this business thing. I want to do this. The second you do that, it's going to do that, and it's going to go down this pathway. The problem is, or the thing you're not getting, is that this actually understands, it has the context of pretty much most of the world, right? And we're all in the sort of the electronic space, right? It knows about the movie industry. It knows about every industry you can ever think about. And so if you set it down this pathway of the solution that you want it to help you with, it will do that. But you're missing the entire point of saying, this is the problem I'm working on. Help me think about through this problem. And now it opens up its vector here or whatever in order to get more information. And when you use simple words like give me non-obvious solutions, it starts to kind of pick in things that are on the edge of an idea that maybe from another industry or something like that. And the more context you give it, the more like, I want you to think about it as an expert, legal consultant for, HR or something like that, right? You're kind of dictating of what, kind of what book to use, as opposed to go to the general dictionary and give me this information back. And that's what I talk about simple and simple ask. If you have a simple question, it's going to go to just, the Encyclopedia Britannica or something like that, old school answer. But like, it'll go to an encyclopedia, and those are very generalist articles, right? As opposed to there's entire essays written on this stuff. And so if you can kind of push it that way by being more specific about, I want you to think from this perspective, stuff like that, and stating the problem, it opens up the aperture, and you're going to find things that you didn't think about. And that's where you're really partnering with it at that point in time. And I think business leaders should be thinking about it from that perspective.
Well, I've seen you post a lot, Sean, about workflows, right?
Yeah.
And I'm just going to be honest, because it doesn't matter anyways. But
this is going to be good, guys. Get ready.
I have no clue what you're talking about when you say that,
Yeah, sure.
And like, you're always like, well, we should automate the workflow. And I'm like, what is, can you, and like, you got to
look at Elias.
sum that back for me as far as like, just describe what you mean by workflow. Do you mean is like someone gets an email and then I got to respond this way? Or are you talking about like traveling through the job shop with the tickets or something like that? Just if you could kind of go through the workflow.
Yeah. So, and this is the part where AI gets overblown in its word usage. So think about this ChatGPT thing I said. Let's talk with the email thing, right? I'm cutting and pasting to ChatGPT to understand how to write a better email. Cool. Once you find out a good prompt that says, I want you to do X, Y, and Z with this email, when you figure out what a good I want you to do X, Y, and Z statement is, then there's this thing of, well, why do I even have to cut and paste it over every time? How can I just have the email come in and then execute that statement and send it off and have it come back? There are systems out there today that are called low code systems or no code, where you're effectively literally drawing. My favorite one's N8, the number 8.
Yeah, I've seen you post about them.
Yeah, I post about that one because for a few reasons. One is that you can download it offline. And so if you're worried about security, stuff like that, you can actually take that fully offline, and it's open source. But also because it is literally a flow chart. So it's like get email, arrow, run the prompt that I typed. So you just cut and paste that prompt back into there. So that do X, Y, and Z to this email, and then send it back, or create a draft email, or however you want to take that. It's
almost like pseudocode or something.
It is. Yeah, it's pseudocode. Yeah, that's the best way to think about it. And it's abstracting all of the crazy code stuff.
How would you
people
know
that are less comfortable with it? But that's a simple workflow. But to your other point on the shop floor, yeah, that's anything that's a workflow is a workflow, and you can automate portions of that.
How would you know that? Like, all right, Elias sends me an email and it says, "Hey, let's get together and go to the Tigers game on Friday," right?
Yep.
And then
what if I don't want to?
NAN comes back and says, "That sounds great, right?" How am I now aware of that? Even if it's like automatically added to my calendar, right?
Yeah. So you can do what you just said. Your example is one where you would probably want to make a decision. Okay.
Yes.
And so again, in most tools now, you can put a human in the loop there. Okay. So meaning that it can text you, hey, he wants to do this, and you can say yes. And then it does all the calendar event stuff.
Oh, okay.
But what you got to think about is
that is a helpful executive assistant.
But let's take it to a little more complex example where he sends you the email. It has all this extra stuff in it that you would want to respond to, like it would take you an email, like, whatever, 4
What hotel
paragraphs.
should I
Okay.
stay at?
Like
what kind of car rental place?
Yeah, all that stuff. Like, just think about a 4-paragraph email. Okay.
Sure.
Humans are very good at deciphering between 2 options, but not necessarily from a speed point of view, from starting with a plain sheet of paper, right? If you think back in like junior high or something like that, you're in art class and like blank piece of paper, teacher says, draw something. Like, we all have analysis paralysis on that of like what to even think about to get going. But if you say walk into the same thing of here's picture 1, here's picture 2, you're very good at saying, I like that one, let's go with that one. Or I like that one, tweak this. So if you could imagine instead, especially if you're not sure about where you want to fully automate, and my air quotes for those not on video, wouldn't it be great if you could walk in and all the emails from yesterday came overnight and you walked in and all the drafts were ready. And all you have to say is, yeah, I like that one. Such a simple answer, send, or adjust, send, etc. And that saves you a lot of time. And there will absolutely be use cases in time where you say, you know what, this is just such a simple thing for this use case. And you would use language, like human language says, if it's this kind of thing, then go ahead and send it automatically. Everything else, I want to keep myself in the loop. And you're kind of growing with the technology of AI advancing at the same time. So these ones are sort of holding with the human in the loop. You get comfortable in some cases, other cases that the tech catches up and you're good to go.
And it's incorporated in your like Outlook?
Yeah, you can Outlook, Gmail, all those kind of things. If you are GCC high people, then I can help you with how to do that because it's a little more complex, but solvable. And your users using it have the same experience. You just have to do a little bit more overhead. And your models are constrained, meaning you can't. There's no ChatGPT on the GCC high side of the internet yet.
That's what I was telling Daniel earlier.
Yeah, I run my own model. Like if you have a good Mac, so if you have a good Mac or and I say that because of the processing power, where you have GPUs on your own desktops, like kind of going back on-prem and away from the cloud is I think where the world's going. Is where I'm going, quite frankly, because I can run a model. People hear DeepSeek and we get scared of it because it's a Chinese, for those not familiar, it's a Chinese open source competitor to OpenAI. Would you go to their website that has the same chat window and type that in there? It's going off to China and giving you the answer. Okay,
correct.
But you can download the model for free, and I can put that on a solid GPU, desktop, and I can unplug it from the internet, and I will get the same results. Totally off.
Sean was trying to explain that to me, and I had a hard time understanding where is the knowledge base, right? So you download the model in a static state, but
yeah. Well, okay. So along with that comes a little bit of what I need to provide as context. There's so models. Every model out there is developed for a long period of time, and it has a cutoff date of knowledge. Okay.
Right.
So if you were to talk to the raw model of ChatGPT 4.0, it will not know. It'll lie. Let me say this. It'll lie to you who the current president is because it does not know. It was finished in, I don't remember, but call it like June of last year. And what over time, the chat, meaning the chat wrapper of ChatGPT, the ability to interface kind of says, well, this person's asking a question that happened between when this model finished and today. And so it will do a quick internet search to kind of fill in its blanks. So when you unplug it from the internet, you do lose that ability to fill in the gap. But it, for writing emails, all that kind of stuff, I don't think that's necessarily relevant. And yeah, you would have it plugged in the internet. And if even for DeepSeek, you wouldn't be necessarily worried that it's sending stuff back to China per se, because it truly is just a mathematical model. All these things are just X times Y plus X times Y, and it's just a probability prediction of the next word at its core. That's all it does. I mean, it's just, I think, all of us may have experienced in the last 3 or 4 years, in certain, like in Gmail in particular, you start to see a little ghost word of the next word to come up.
Sure. Or now it'll have suggested email responses in entirety now.
Now they do, yeah.
Yeah.
But even like the 3 years ago, when you sort of had that nest ghosted word, like, okay, it's usually right. And the concept was really like, okay, if I wrote these three, once upon, is already ghosted there, and then time is the next natural one. So if you're predicting the next word, why can't you just and you're predicting with a high probability, why can't you just take that entire new phrase and predict the next word? Okay, you predict the next word, feed that back again. And that's all it does at its core. It's a little more complex, but for anybody who's true technology understands these things fully, a lot of my explanations are more for people to understand maybe what's happening, and you don't need a technologist from a technologist point of view.
I think you did a good job.
Yeah. So that's why you can get it off. You can take it off the internet. And when you do that, you get the security and everything like that, and you're sourcing it locally. Then at the end of the day, when all these companies finally, tell us all they're not making money, which they're not, and raised all the prices, you will have the ability with an open source model to just pay for electricity.
Sean, I got to go back to this because that's how my mind works. Customer sends purchase order email, right? Could we then automate the workflow, as some people call it, to then automatically order that that BOM on DigiKey? Let's just use DigiKey for one source, and then also order the boards if needed, and then also enter that into my internal system.
Yeah. So the answer is yes. The caveat I give with everybody and all business leaders is, do you know how to use ChatGPT first? Okay. Yes. So they want to skip right to that use case, which the answer is absolute yes.
Sean's good there. He's good.
You need to be able to break it up. And I see too many people skipping over that. And by the way, they're skipping over the education of their workforce, because you can make all these fancy tools that are fully automated and do all these things, and your people won't use them because they're afraid of them. And you did not take them on the journey. This is as much about human change management as it about trying to do automation.
Wow.
And you need to take your workforce on the journey. And the companies that are able to take their workforce on the journey are going to be, they have the most opportunity of anybody. The more senior you are, the more valuable you are to, if you can get this thing going in your mind of using it as a tool. The younger guys coming out of college, they understand how to use these tools, but they don't know the problems to solve. The older generation understands the problems to solve, but maybe not as agile and curious as they used to learn this new calculator. But if they learn that new calculator, the value that they can bring is 100x what the younger guys can do. So that's why it's like cross-gen AI is cross-generation AI, and I'm kind of that guy right in the middle, trying to bridge and take everybody on that journey together, young helping old, and vice versa. But your specific use case, Sean, yes. But you can't, you have to be able to chunk it up to this workflow. And people will, you see on the internet things called agents. I don't think agents are purely there yet. And let me give the example what that means between a workflow. Workflow, what you just described, Sean, says, I get email. You're going to write a prompt that extracts the information of what they want into a probably JSON object. If you don't, doesn't matter if you understand what that is or not. Just think about structured information versus unstructured. Language is unstructured. Database is structured. You can extract unstructured with large language model into a structured format. Okay. You would then take that structured format, see if it's available in DigiKey, through their API, and you go back and forth. So you have a lot more workflow blocks. Think of it as like value stream mapping kind of thing. Right?
Yeah.
An agent, agentic workflows means I have a we'll call it like a order entry agent, and your job is be order entry for my company. That's it. And it knows, well, anytime I get emails, I have to do this. I got to send it off to DigiKey, all that kind of stuff. And you don't have to describe to it what it needs to do. It understands that an order entry person, via the knowledge of the internet, does the following functions. That stuff is the hype, I think, right now. It's getting better, certainly in certain use cases. And I think in the next 2 years or so, you'll see it just amazing, where you don't even have to set up these workflows. But I think if you want to make sure, if you want to guarantee outcomes, right? I think the more you chunk it up to a workflow, which is just block diagrams. And by the way, workflows don't always have to have AI in the middle, right? AI means, in that kind of context, means you're going to use a ChatGPT kind of prompt. But if you're just doing math, like, don't throw a large language underscored language model at the problem. Okay. First of all, you're going to burn a tree unto itself to answer the question of what 2 + 2 is. Okay. However, the end around is that computer language underscore language is a language. And so you can have a large language model, ChatGPT, give you the code, which is language, to give you deterministic outcomes, which is math. When you have deterministic outcomes, you know that this thing you ordered, Sean, is correct. You know that the financial aspect of it is correct. If you try to use large language models on that, it will get it correct most of the time. But the fact is that large language models are probabilistic. It's what's the next probable word. And there is room for error there when you are looking for deterministic outcomes.
Yeah, it's like that PDF I was showing you where it doesn't match the database value or not.
Right.
On that PDF. And if it does, then it can continue forward. And if it doesn't, then it stops, right?
That's right. Yeah. And you can use these things to write code today. And that's the kind of, again, people need to learn this AI for everyone first and foremost. And that's where I come at from a company perspective and based on my sort of executive experience background of what you read off before, but it was, COO, CTO, CRO in another company, revenue officer. And I'm coming at from that perspective. You got to teach people before you start to automate the thing you don't even understand.
Yeah.
And everybody wants to get the value out of it right away by automating. And you can't. You got to take your company on the journey. They have to learn. And it is not an overnight thing.
Perfect example of that just happened. So my CEO, she's playing around with ChatGPT every now more and more and more. And I had this job. I'm doing like a freebie for one of my suppliers as a thank you, right? And I had this board designed in Czech Republic, right, by one of my friends, and he sent over the BOM for it, and he didn't include any. Man. What?
Give him some love.
Petter, yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
I'll show the board too. It's fantastic. I want to show it light up though. It's gonna be cool. But anyway, so when he sent over the BOM, I didn't get any manufacturer part numbers out of it, right? So and they're in there, but I just was like lazy about it. I just didn't want to go out and get it. So I got footprint resistor 0603 1K, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it's a small board, so it's got like 7 part numbers in there, 7 unique part numbers. And I literally threw those footprints and those values, copied and pasted from that spreadsheet into ChatGPT and deep research mode. And I said, can you find part numbers for me on this? And I just pasted it, right? So we're talking 5 seconds because I'm good with Control A, Control C, Control V, right? Bop, 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 enter. And then, I'll put the results, and it was like, wow. And it showed me like my BOM cost and everything, right? Mm-hmm. And then so I was like, and then I put it into DigiKey, and I noticed like, hey, this blue LED that it recommended is like $1.27 each. And I was like, I wonder if we can find something with a similar footprint. And these are the schematic. I copied the schematic of how many lumens range he wanted, right? And I said, this is the low end and this is the high end. I don't really want to spend this much money. Can we find a different alternate that would be less available or less costly, right? And it shot me back through the results, but it gave me from like Avnet and Mauser, and I'm like, I just want to buy it on DigiKey, and I Control V, right, and it shot me out the part number. Go to DigiKey, and it's like 27 cents, right? So it's like $1 each I'm saving on each LED. And then I showed my CEO, who does a lot of my assembly quoting, right, especially the reviewing part of it, and she was like blown away. So when you talk about like, you have a user use it, right, and then they show the upper, and then she's like, well, do I need any of these online automatic sourcing platforms, or can I just copy and paste this into, you know what I'm saying? And
so if you iterate that in the ChatGPT style, then I think you can get there. The problem is just not having everybody skip to that. I mean, if you're more up to speed than most, and so I just want to make sure your audience doesn't just try to like skip to these crazy use cases.
Yeah,
which are normally, to be fair, they're more normal use cases. And the thing you're describing is actually what I would call in the middle right now. There's nothing proprietary about that. And so those are places you should actually even seek to fully automate in time. If you get to the side where you have the data, like, pricing and things like that, that's your own private data where you do your own model in time. And that's that pillar 3 stuff. There's so much in pillar 2, But again, you got to take everybody on the journey. And so if you're able to kind of get your entire workforce, and by the way, my opinion, this is existential to careers in no matter what you do, frontline worker all the way to CEO, board, doesn't matter. If you're not adopting some tools and learning these things now, where you don't have your little executive assistant that's with you all day long, I think that as companies right now, and investing in teaching everybody, we're doing people a disservice, not only for our company, but for their own careers. Right. I mean, Microsoft just laid off another 6,000 people. It's not like they're doing bad. So that's getting better and better. And so, you can do those workflows like you're saying there. But the important part is for people to learn and adopt, because some of those things, you'll invest all this money in that stuff, and the ROI is like, I see it, but you never get to it because you have internal resistance because people are worried about their jobs. And so giving them that, you got to take them on that journey. And that's a little bit of investment.
Because it's the exact opposite as my experience as a business owner. So I bought an AOI, right? And my quality manager, she's been doing PCBA for 25, 30 years, right? She's like, oh, you're not going to need me anymore. You got an AOI, and because I called it the MOI, Mary Optical Inspection. That's her name, Mary. And before I had AOI.
Way to not fuel any of her fears, right?
Yeah. So, but I got it. I said, just try it out, please. I'm not going to replace you with this thing, And on top of that, at the time, it was just me, her, and her daughter running the entire assembly department. I'm like, well, who's going to fix it when I messed up the solder joint, right, Mary? You still got a job, so don't worry about that, right? Like, this thing could tell me. And then now she loves it, right? To the point where, like, it went down for, like, 5 minutes one time because we lost air in the building. And, like, she was, like, freaking out, like, oh, my God, I need my tool.
Yeah.
I bought 2 selective solders, right? Every time I've bought one, I've had to hire 2 more people to stuff boards. It's like, it's not, and then they got to have somebody to run the machines, right? Every time I've introduced some type of automation into the company, it has expanded the workforce in my scenarios that I'm describing.
Or changed what you're looking for. Yeah. I would say, I think you should look at a percentage basis of how many people in the world feel even comfortable with the Mary thing. She already gave you a little bit of resistance. She got there over time. Arguably, let's say less than 50% of the workforce is actually even comfortable to even coming up to speed where Mary was at. It's probably even a larger percentage of that. So but here's the thing. If you can get everybody in your company, and I would call it AI first at that point in time, if everybody is using this is kind of the big point, is like, you have 2 choices as a business owner, right? Yeah, you could start to reduce costs, or especially if you're first in the next 2 to 3 years, if you're the first ones to really get there, your ability to scale with the same workforce, not add another thing, and drop every single increase in revenue right to the bottom line. So for your, material cogs, right? So your labor the labor percentage just erodes.
And my $20 a month ChatGPT subscription.
Right, exactly. So I think you have those choices to make over time, but you got to get everybody there first, because you can't have the resistance. You can't have people like where you're starting to risk, like people seeing you think they're automating it out. It's not that approach. I wrote an article on LinkedIn that really kind of tries to take it from a, point of view of this. Don't even remove the word AI. It's like, Sean, you can go out to your workforce and say, hey, great news, everyone. I decided that I'm going to hire everybody their own assistant. The new employee starts tomorrow. You need to be the best manager and leader of this. If your new this new employee is going to be the best protege you have ever had, but you got to get them there. So when you get bad information out as a good manager, you're not just looking at why did this person give it wrong, but I'm reflecting on how I taught them, how I asked their question, how I led them. Genius. And you're not just saying, you screwed up, get out of my way, right? I think people, especially if they don't have magical first experiences, get to that point in time with ChatGPT and things like that. So think about it as hiring that protege, because nobody would have a problem with, Sean, if you doubled your costs or more and everybody got this new buddy, nobody would have a problem with that. But yet, because it's a computer, we as humans naturally react that other way. And so there is a huge change management aspect around this. And unless you're a complete startup AI first company where people enter into that company knowing like this is the deal, and you get to hire at a slower rate because you are AI first, that's one thing. But to convert the companies is extremely difficult from a leadership perspective. And it's not about automating the workflow. It's about taking everybody on the journey to use the new tool, which has a lot of benefits to your company and a career. And what you get to do, especially on the workflow side of things, is if you can take everybody on the, say like 70% of the people really adopt and use this thing as a tool and a partner, you could probably get 30% of that 70% into the middle tier that want to do this low code workflow automation. If that happens, you have now democratized the automation of your company, not by hiring programmers and coders and one smart guy that everybody goes to and everybody's now to describe like, this is the thing I want you to automate. This is what my day is like, blah, blah, blah. You've now democratized it. And all of that is absolutely capable of being done today if you get them to learn the baseline first. Stop trying to skip over it. Yeah, you got to get the buy-in, and that democratized workflow. Do you imagine how fast you can automate a lot of stuff in the point of view? And then you should say, hey, look, the first person to automate out their job gets promoted.
So I want to jump in here real quick.
Go ahead, Elise. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
You've mentioned this journey, right, and getting people up to speed. And in the beginning of the episode, you said kind of everybody's in an even playing field, right? Because nobody went to school for this. So let's take the example of a small business, right? Because a lot of the people that are listening to us, and all of us included, work for or are employed by small businesses.
Yep.
Where do we start? Where's a good starting point on what's a good resource to getting, the kind of the rank and file to start, achieving some level of know-how and education on these platforms? Like, where would you start?
So one, I have a platform. So my shameless plug is www.crossgen-ai.com. And through there, I have a community that's sort of some level of, Kevin Bacon, 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon kind of removal. So most people are sort of related to me somehow because I don't publish that thing broadly. And it's a lot of people in electronics. There's over 100 people now. I pretty much do the majority of the posting still, but you can learn through that by use cases. The other thing is just to actually, instead of just listening to this podcast and just saying, yeah, I should do that. Like right now, this second, download it, sign up. I do recommend at least a $20 a month one. One, your information is protected.
And then start the podcast again on another device.
That's right. That's right. It's to stop listening. It's to stop listening and saying you're going to do this stuff and actually just type in your first prompt. And unlike, I think every tool in the world that's kind of ever come out in the past, this tool can actually tell you how to use the tool itself. If you ask the question, hey, I asked this question and it's like, this is a crap answer. Like, tell it that, like, I don't like this answer. What did I not tell you? And it will expand. Like, you should have asked it this way. Copy that, paste it back again, and you have a better experience. ChatGPT itself can help you make the prompt better for itself.
It's a great answer.
Yeah. Like, it's like puts my new business out of business, right?
Yeah.
But what's also interesting around this is you do have to use it off. The more you use it, the more you get out of it. No different than that protege kind of thing. You need to teach them over time, and it needs to learn more about how you do things. And it is not saving your information as we classically think about it. You're not changing the model. But the more you use it, the more context it understands about you and how you respond to emails and what your background is and how you think about things. And it pulls that in. And a year from now, you'll find that you have to give less and less feedback for the thing that you maybe had wanted to tweak. But to get there, I call it AI coaching is sort of what I'm doing, but it's actually really personal training, right? I think it's more of a, January 1st, everybody has new resolutions. We're going to go work out. Well, if somebody's not there, if you're not there actually working out, it's one thing to learn how to do the equipment correctly and not hurt yourself. That's the learning of ChatGPT. It's another thing to show up to the gym every day. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I almost think of it as personal training. And it even took me discipline to do it. Like I had sticky note above my monitor for a long time that says, how can AI help me solve this problem over and over again? I have to get in my own head. Even my iPhone, you can program the one button on here, and Androids I'm not totally sure about, but when I push and hold that one, it goes right to ChatGPT. So I'm lowering the barriers to interacting with it, right? In the car ride, again, with any $20 a month subscription, you can open up a new chat and go to what's called advanced voice mode. It's the bottom right. Click on that, and you can have a conversation with somebody in your car. Sorry for your podcast part, but not listening to the Decode podcast, but having that conversation with it, and it's really good at like if you're saying nothing, it doesn't pick up background noise like old tech used to. Like it'll just talk to you back and forth in a human voice, and it's so good now that you can interrupt it if it's not giving you what you wanted. Interrupt it. It'll stop. It'll adjust. So it's about lowering those barriers and learning from other people that are kind of doing this space now.
So I kind of want to ask about what might be a more difficult or extreme use case. So like specifically related to our shared industry of PCB assembly and manufacturing, like probably everyone's familiar with the Hermes protocol and CFX and the efforts being made to automate and streamline and make a collaborative, comprehensive, right? So some places, I don't want to name names, but like some places don't have the luxury of having one vendor from start to finish as much as possible, where you have, and so you've got this hodgepodge of equipment made by different people, and it doesn't like to communicate with each other. And to invest in a full-blown CFX ready line or Hermes ready, like to get all this stuff working together. And you know where I'm going. So is AI going to be useful in accelerating this type of collaboration between machines and different?
So if you think about like large businesses, extremely large businesses, adoption of AI will cut out costs very easily, right? You have a lot of human bloat. For small, medium businesses, you get to now start to do things that you could never afford to do or didn't understand how to do or have to hire a contractor for. Especially if you are comfortable with seeing code and not understanding it and just cutting and pasting it, okay? I'm a fab guy, though I do have some PCB assembly experience. At Summit, I had a quick turn shop, and then TTM I had a Stafford Springs facility. But it's even worse in the fab side. Fabs move overseas before standards even exist, and IPC's been trying for a long time to get everybody to kind of work on communication standards. They just don't exist. And then you go out to Industry 4.0 guys. I always venture out at IPC, always venture out of the fab side to the, the shiny object side on the assembly side. And, that's where all the IoT vendors are. And quite frankly, the connectivity between those machines is light years ahead of the fab side, but it kind of doesn't matter now. So let's talk about like Industry 4.0, what a large language model can do. And one of the benefits is on the technology side is you have most sites, you have a hardened API, meaning like the information's in this format, in this order. You always had to add programming to actually match it to the other side where you need to plug something in this order. Right. You had to have companies before talk to each other and agree how we're going to program to line these things up. So all these wires plug to plug fits.
How do we shake hands with our different languages?
Yeah. Now you get to put a large language model in the middle if that conversation has never happened. And the large language model can understand the language coming out of here and then translate it to the language over here. And that's no different, by the way, than a lot of what humans do. Like we're translating a need for some, toilet paper at the facility. We're translating that to email, which is then translated to a PO, which goes to the other side, and translation, all the way to the ERP system of the toilet paper guys. All in between there, you're just translating data from one form to another, all along there, and the humans in the middle there. The large language model gets to replace a lot of that. And so you have to have predefined conversations.
It goes back to your earlier example that you gave when we first started the episode about, taking that just Excel sheet that just had non-equations, just numbers and stuff, and transferring it into a format that worked. It's the same
Absolutely.
deal, right?
Digestible.
Yeah. Now let me blow your mind more on the Internet of Things side. So it's one thing for the communication protocol, and you can write things in there, and you will need to buy a computer in the middle. If you ChatGPT will tell you every single freaking thing to do, all of it. If you ask the right question and very specifically, I want you to tell me even how to plug it into an outlet, okay? How to turn on the button, how to open up a terminal to paste this code in, cut and paste this code to make these things in there. And if there's an error, you select the error, copy and paste. This is all about Control C, Control V, your command, right? Like you can do crazy stuff with just that.
Don't forget controlling.
To then sort of move into the crazier stuff, particularly with internet things. I always was pissed off with small, medium business. Like all these SaaS companies and startups that are VC funded and all this, they have no good cost thoughtful solutions for small, medium businesses. They go after the big guys. We get left behind. There's not as big of an ROI. You kind of want it, but the ROI is not there. You got to invest in capacity, all this stuff. Okay. Now you can ask those questions. And so as a proof of point, before I jumped ship, I did 2 fundamental projects on my own. One was I got a pick light. If you're not familiar with that, it's a light that blinks where something's at physically in a warehouse. And I bought these things from a company called Voodoo Robotics. A good plug for them. It's because they run off of AAA batteries, and you can move them around or whatever. It has a an e-ink like Kindle screen with a button. And so at the beginning of the long warehouse aisle, you can scan a barcode, and that barcode will blink the light, and you go down. Pulled it off there. I pushed the button, and that's it. I don't have to scan another barcode or whatever. So now you have this physical. ChatGPT was able to code that entire thing. So you get the blinky light stuff, but now you actually have to code like I scan this barcode. It looks up on my ERP system, all that. I did not type a single line of code myself. I saw code. I did not type it. I didn't read it. I cut and paste it. And in 5 hours from getting those things that have physical real world stuff happening, the code worked. You would have never had that option before. You'd have to hire somebody, all this crazy stuff. And anybody in your company, if they can go on that journey, can do it. Anyone is capable of doing this. So that's use case one. And then the second one was, I was like, how do you get to this real world thing? And again, I was just, to light up a line in Fab that doesn't have any sensors on it yet, like the old ones. It's like $20,000 a line to light it up, and they're going to charge you another $40,000 a year recurring just to be able to maintain a database, which is pretty much open source these days. So I went to ChatGPT and I said, I want a pH probe sensor for my plating tank that is enabled on the Internet of Things, sends information to this website, and that website is the handoff point, and coded the website that way too. I want to know what processor to buy, what other things I need for like the Wi-Fi thing, all that stuff. I wasn't that as specific as I'm being because I think people need to state the problem more. But I did say, I want the code to go on the processor, give me a wiring diagram for how to plug the pH probe into the thing, all of that. And I think the prompt was like 5 sentences long. And I said, it has to be all available on Amazon.com, and give me a shopping list for it. And it did it. And I'm telling you, there's a drawing, the code was there. It gave me like safety things. I didn't ask about safety. It even told me, by the way, you need to buy pH buffers, which I know in hindsight, yes, of course I should have asked for that because you have to calibrate it, but I didn't even ask it. It told me that and gave me the shopping list. All of that, ordered on Sunday, came in on Tuesday, 30 minutes. I had to solder 2 things and cut and paste over code. It worked the first time.
That's crazy.
Meanwhile, by the way, how much is that sensor if I were to buy internet and all that? So it's about like $500 to $700 plus all the backend systems you got to buy, all that. This whole thing, $30.
Unbelievable.
So it doesn't, we just don't ask the questions, right?
And probably with a link on Amazon where to buy it too, right?
No, it's Amazon links. I think I showed you, right, Sean? Like I literally, it would kind of spread throughout, and after it came back, said, just give me the shopping list, and it link, click buy. And by the way, even that necessary click buy thing, that's going to go away within the year. You'll be able to kind of directly buy from these systems. That's the kind of stuff that's happening now from these companies. So like you can get to Internet of Things. Yeah. And immediately after that it was like, make me a tachometer because I want to know if my DES line is running, because it's an older DES line, doesn't have that sensor system. And it's like, do you want a magnetic Hall read sensor? Do you want an optical sensor? Like those are the questions they asked me up front. And then it went off and did it with the code and everything. And so all these use cases where these vendors were coming to you, all that technology, the cost of technology, at least on the sort of the software side of things, and how it can guide you to cheaper hardware, is going toward zero. The cost of knowledge is going towards zero, right? I mean, think about it, a kid that is born today, and I don't know where this goes. Like, I'm not saying that, I don't know if the world's going to be better off or not, right? I'm sure there's social unrest that comes from all this, but kid that's born today now no, none of us, but our kids were born with, the internet fully like in their hand, right? With the phone. Now you have all of human knowledge in your hand in the way you want to understand and ask it. And so I think curiosity should go off the charts, right? If like learning itself in in school, like I don't have, the schools have to figure out a different way to do things. Because the fact is that should you not let people use this stuff? I think that's like telling people not to use a calculator. We all got out over it, over time. I think humans over history, there's always, does anybody know how to wash their clothes with a washboard anymore? Like, we just think we're special just as much as all human history, right? We just think we're special. But in order to actually do, and the reason we can do these things today is we build on the shoulders of giants that came before us. And so if we think we're going to Mars, if we think we're curing cancer and all that, a human cannot be expected to know all the information of all, however many hundreds of billions of books out there, to actually build on top of that knowledge to do the next great thing. And you have to be able to use these tools to do that. And if that means that people don't, I'm just extreme example, know how to do 2 + 2 = 4. The question is, does it actually matter in order to, but I think the understanding is important. And so when I talk like on school board stuff, with like high schools, I'm like, you should think about the intuition. Should people be like skirting and using GPT so they can, not have to do any hard work? That's not it. And that's a problem you need to deal with, but keeping it away from them is not important. Instead, pivot them to the thing that says, I did one where, I just said on Claude, and you can do this on your Claude mobile, make an application that teaches me how the quadratic equation works with the coefficients so I get intuitively understand. And sure enough, right there on your mobile device, in the same chat, the thing I love about Claude is it automatically runs the code that it makes. There were little sliders and an equation, and you would do the one coefficient and the concavity would change. And that's intuition. Yeah. Plus B, C. Yeah, exactly. That's intuition about how things work, right? Or let me add 2 beakers to understand molarity in science, or make me a full somebody. Oh, my son on the car, he was asked, how did the big tower cranes, how they kind of build themselves up in order to go over building. If you've never seen it, you don't have a video, but you want to understand it, I just said make a little simulation. It's got little stupid bricks kind of building up, and it shows where it pulls it up, and like it works. And that's where we kind of need to go. But that's just on the human side. We can learn all of these things. I don't understand what Internet of Things is. I don't understand Industry 4.0. Help me understand it. I don't understand what you just said to me. Dumb it down to me as if I was in high school. Eventually, especially in business context, it will eventually give you a lemonade stand metaphor, quite frankly. But like, that is all in your hand now. Like, you just have to be able to ask the question. How you ask is important, especially as you're trying to do business things over time. Yeah. So anyways, that's why I jumped ship to start my own company. I feel like that wave is here right now, and the stuff is good enough to have value add. And you can do all the things, Sean, you guys were asking about, but I do encourage people to listen to people like me, and do not leave the human out of this, because unless you're a complete AI first startup, you will have resistance. You will have things that you invest in and do not get any traction out of. You got to take people on the journey. It's still a people thing. Okay.
Yeah, I'm almost grateful for the hallucinations ChatGPT 3 and 3.5 gave out, because I feel like in a selfish way, a lot of people had a bad taste in their mouth from using that back then, and they have no clue what O3 mini high codes like, or Grok 3 or Claude, right? They have no clue the advancements of it, and it's great. Sean, this has been a fantastic, you and I know we could talk to each other for hours. But I want to give you a shout out, a chance to plug your new company and your new venture, and anything else you want to talk about.
But like I said, it's crossgen-ai.com. I do post on LinkedIn a lot as well. Just I got kind of free stuff that goes out there. I do the community is $15 a month because I'm trying to make it not a charity. It does cost me money to run those things. But it's a place where people can share their own experiences and build on that. It does take time to learn this, how to work out, right? You don't lose weight right away, right? You got to take like a year or so, and depending on your skill sets. But I think if you're listening and you're in those kind of communities, that you will learn much faster of people that have gone before you and discovered these things. And then again, I think you get a positive flywheel of magical experiences that then builds on each other. And the more magical experiences you have, the more you're using it, the better the experience, because it understands more. You don't have to tell it again that I run a PCB assembly company, right? You'll have to tell it once. It's got it. Yep. Good to go. And by the way, the first time you tell it that, it's coming now from, if you say pick and place, that if you just open this thing up for the very first time, you say, tell me about pick and place. Do you know how many things in the world are pick and place? Like that word?
Yeah.
Okay. But if you say, I'm Sean Kincaid, I run a PCB assembly company, blah, blah, blah. Now, for the most part, every time you ever ask it in the context anywhere, it's going to answer it from that place. Unless you say, nope, I'm not talking about PCB this time. I'm talking about whatever other pick and place thing it is. And so that flywheel keeps on going. The services I'm focused on is I'm looking at for small, medium businesses. I'm looking at sort of the executive coaching side of things to get the business leaders to understand and teach their teams and help convert the human element of this from my background as, COO, CRO on private, public, private equity backed companies. And that I do the workflow automation stuff as well. I think that's important that I do some of those through you, but I'd rather teach everybody how to fish afterwards.
And teach them what workflow is.
Yeah, exactly. But it truly, everybody, as long as you are curious, you can get there. And I mean, everybody. And if you don't understand it in the language it's talking to you about, just ask it to change. It's okay. So I really do believe in humans really partnering this stuff. I don't think it's here to take us over. I don't think it's here to take your job. It is here to enhance you as a thought partner. You are still a thought leader, no matter what. Don't turn the keys over. But if you find use cases where it's a simple thing and you're saying, yeah, this is good over and over again, then okay, that's not value add. You're not, if you're saying this thing's automated on that side, it's not value add to you. So stop doing it. But please do not skip over the human element of all this. That is my number one message for everyone. And I can help there. So.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for joining us, Sean. This was an awesome conversation. And I think the one takeaway I'm going to have more than anything is the last statement that you made, or close to last statement. This isn't going to make people dumb. It's going to supercharge learning if used appropriately. So that's right. I really think that's a great way to look at it. So thanks for joining us. Thank you to all our listeners for tuning in, listening, watching on YouTube. If you like what you heard today,
tell your friends.
Yeah, tell somebody, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Are you going to SMTAI in Chicago in October, Sean?
Which Sean? That Sean? My next, I was invited to speak at PCB West. I'm open to other invitations to talk about this within the industry. I do come from this industry. Obviously, this stuff's not specific to our industry, but my ability to help understand the problem right out of the gate is specific to that. So I will take invites to come be a speaker there.
Well, we'll see if we can put you in touch with the right people. But
we know some people.
We will be at SMTAI in October, the 19th through the 23rd in booth 2403. We'll be doing interviews with folks in their space like Sean and others. And if you would like to see us and join us there, we encourage you going on to smtai.org, register, and make the trip to Chicago. They got good pizza, good steaks, and we're going to be there. What else do you need? Let's make it happen. On behalf of Sean, Daniel, myself, and our guest, Sean, thanks for tuning in this week, and we hope to see you next time around.
See you next time.